Man, alright.
Hello.
Yeah, I think we finally got this up. Maybe.
Is it live? It says it's loading.
Yeah, it's this whole live thing is new to us. So please bear with us as we're setting this up.
I think it's live now. Or
Okay.
something else was loading.
Alright, so I'm Jay Hooligan.
Hooligan V.
Yes, so thanks for joining us today. Yeah, so let me adjust this a little bit. Hopefully that'll turn out a little bit better. Yeah, thanks for bearing with us as we're trying to figure out this whole live thing. This is the first time we're going live on this page, but we wanted to do a video today because I know you wanted to talk about the new media loophole that's been going on here. So, when did I put that video out? Jeez,
Like a month ago?
was it a month? Was it only a month ago? Yeah, we're in February. It's like we survived a month. It's much different than 2020, thankfully. But yeah, we are in February. Welcome to February. But we wanted to do so the video I put out last month, and there was another one. There were two that I put out last
Yeah,
month.
you put one in December and then
Oh, December.
end of December or the 1st. And then you put one out like I don't know, middle of January.
Something like, and I was talking about the new media loophole, and yeah, that's been a big one because vertical integration has been huge. It's been bypassing a lot of people's radars because everyone's focused on. They were focused on the elections. They were focused on big tech because there are antitrust cases going on with big tech, but not necessarily for Hollywood studios, which is very, very surprising because they've been very open about it for at least a couple of years now. And I think I mentioned it on another post where I had said, that since last year. And it's actually, no, they've been making a lot of power moves since last year, which is what's different. So yeah, I guess the new media loophole. So what is it? Alright. Go back into the history so we can catch you up. New media loophole. Alright, so in 1920, there was a movement by indie filmmakers and movie theaters. And what they had done was they band together since the big six, the big studios that were back then, they were monopolizing the industry. So there was a practice on there called block booking that they would use where they would send out groups of their films to theaters, and it was massively unfair because they would keep their best movies for themselves to show at their own theaters that they own. So vertical integration is they owned all the actors, directors, and content as well as the distribution channels, and they fed pretty much scraps to everyone else, like the theaters. So
it was all pretty much in-house.
Yeah, it was all in-house.
Like everything from like pre to the distribution.
The distribution, everything was all in-house, like you mentioned. So we call that vertical integration, which is essentially a monopolization of that industry. So what had happened, like I said, it started with indie filmmakers and movie theaters together, and then it moved on to Supreme Court where it was U.S. versus Paramount to show that they're violating these Sherman antitrust laws, which prevent companies like the Big Six from monopolizing the industry. So that ruling, so it started again in 1920.
All of that was before new media.
Yes.
All the digital film work going on.
Exactly. So, all that was before new media, for one. All right. After that, what had happened was in 1948, the ruling finally passed by Supreme Court that in U.S. versus Paramount, that they were in fact creating a monopoly and ruled against the Big Six. So we won that, but again, it didn't technically start in the Supreme Court. It started with indie filmmakers and movie theaters because we were getting short end of stick. We were getting paid less, right, for our content because they would own pretty much all the distribution. They have their own theaters, right? And then it moved further down to the movie theaters because they weren't getting the good movies. They weren't getting tentpole movies. And then again, that's when it after almost 30 years of litigation, they finally ruled against them and said, okay. And I believe it was RKO was the first one to get rid of their theater. And then it moved on to to Paramount, and then all the rest of them too. And thus began the separation of distribution, and why you have studios don't own theaters anymore. Now, flash forward almost a century later. This was 90 years. No, it was from 1948. So 60 something odd years.
What, 70?
Yeah, 60, 70 years or so to 2010. Now, I've talked about this in my other video too, where it started with Netflix. Netflix used to be a DVD distribution company where you would go to their service, and I believe it was all mail-in, and you'd say, "Hey, I would want this." I think they did have the website set up so you can go in there, pick a movie that you want to do.
Right.
They'll send you. Think of it like mail-in Redbox, is essentially what it is, or what it was.
Right.
You'd watch a movie as long as you'd want, then you'd send it back when you were done, and that's how they did their business. They licensed out the movies so they can send it to people. All right. In 2010, after they had moved to, and I believe this is after they moved to streaming, because they would stream purely licensed material. 2010, they came out with Netflix Originals. Now, what that meant was they created their own content. So they owned it. They owned the content that they were making, and they distributed it on the same platform. Now, the big studios were pretty smart about this, and they didn't bite. And that's why there was a lot of smack talk against Netflix and the success that they were having, because it was literally about how they're getting away with this, and they didn't like it. For many years they didn't like what Netflix was doing, and even now they kind of got that whole competitive streak that they're doing. And again, what had happened was, because they weren't getting hit with antitrust laws, again, flash forward maybe like another 5 years or so, and now you got all the streaming wars that were going on.
I think Netflix kind of like brought that flame, like ignited that flame for all the other like studios that were out there. All the big studios who were like, "Oh, we can't do that." Oh, yeah. But they're doing it. Absolutely,
absolutely. And like I said, their lawyers, I would say the big six. The big six is no longer, but they have these big companies, the big studios that are out there. Yeah, or are they still? They might still be. I would imagine that they. I would say that. Yeah, I would agree.
Conspiracy
theories, yeah. Anyway, but that whole advent of creating originals and owning your own content and pushing it out was all circumvented due to new media. Now, new media, that was my second video that I put out there. New media is considered any new technology that uses more like digitized platforms to redistribute information, which is just a fancy way of saying like the internet. Okay, because what was not considered new media, and which was protected by the Sherman antitrust case from the 1948 ruling, was old media, which included feature films. That all changed with new media. So once you have, like I said, it was only considered new media. Like feature films and analog TV were not considered part of new media until. Not until. They were not considered part of new media unless they were redistributed across new media channels, aka the internet. Right? So that's essentially how that came to be. So that is where all the streaming wars came up, and why it's been so interesting to watch. And it's funny seeing history repeat itself literally 100 years later, where they're back to monopolizing it. And I know, like I said, I wrote that article in those previous videos about how Disney openly announced the remonopolization of the film industry. It's because that's literally what happened with the Big Six. They announced Disney Plus, even though technically Netflix was doing it already, and they were the first ones. But Disney was, again, one of that classic studio. See, Netflix started as a streaming company and then built into that. Versus,
wasn't Disney back then during that time? Because Disney has been around for a while.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Netflix is more of it was up and coming.
It was up and coming, yes.
But now it's been a while, so they should it should have been brought to their attention if they didn't know, right? By their lawyers or whatever.
Yeah, what do you mean brought to their attention?
Like, you the integration, the vertical integration.
Sort of. Again, it was
not
because
taught anymore in entertainment law school.
But that was the new media loophole. Is because new media ended up getting, like special treatment. And it still is special treatment.
You know why?
Why?
Because every single union for film has a new media side for any digital content that you guys put out. Mm-hmm. And they don't have any standard rules for it yet, even though it's been quite a while since we've been doing digital filmmaking.
Yep.
So that's my question. Where are all the standards already? It's been like what? How many years since digital? Like what, 20 years?
Almost 20.
Less than 20 years?
Yeah, less than 20 years probably, but just about a couple decades, because the big tech boom from your .coms in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s.
And yet there are still no standards for it.
Yeah. And that's why I keep talking about this. That's why we're really trying to get that information out there, because this whole thing with not having a standard.
I guess not really. I'm thinking about it now. They have day rates, but even then it's not really the same as theatrical or short films or any other type of filmmaking that you do.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's true. But you are right. The whole new media avenue kind of gave benefits to them. Right? So doesn't like SAG hold benefits to
gave
new media versus, say, like if it's purely for television or for feature films?
A lot of unions gave any filmmaker who was doing new media projects the chance to actually, have that discount. He distracted me. I was mid-thought.
Sorry, yeah. The discounts that they would make for them is essentially they would give them special treatment, right? Yeah, they would give them special treatment.
Yeah, well, again, because it was such an up and coming subject that they would encourage new media, so they would give you like cut prices for hiring union talent or union crew.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they would give all these benefits to those people that are doing new media, and then it just became this whole thing. And now, fast forward again to the streaming wars, and I think it was 2015, 2016, maybe 2016, 2017. I'm trying to remember some of the history behind it. Once they decided, hey, we're gonna do this, like we are moving forward with this push for stream, everybody started to do it because why was it? It was because Netflix was winning awards. They were taken away from their awards and their prestige. Roma
really set that, really ignited that, like made an explosion, because then you had Steven Spielberg like, why does this happen? Why did they win?
We can't have them winning, guys.
That
why
really
is Netflix out here?
Created a domino effect about, we're going to do this too.
Spielberg said it. It must be fact. It's like, but that's the thing. If you look at the Academy Awards, their guidelines for that, I think it's you need to be at least in theaters for a minimum of like 14 days.
14 or 30 days?
No, for to be considered for the Oscars, you have to have a minimum. I'm pretty sure it was 14 days. The 30 days
I
is
thought it was
separate.
90 days. That's what I was thinking about.
90 days is the standard. So standard for tentpole release is 90 days before moving to stream. And that was the deal that they had, that studios had with movie theaters for tentpole movies, is they could not move to a streaming platform like Netflix until after the 90-day period. Okay. Again, that was more for so theaters and other people that are benefiting from the theaters, like the sales for food and stuff like that, which help them replenish. That was so they can recoup some of that cost, and then the actors and the actual creators, whether they be indie or not, did get more of that benefit for that. And of course, I do understand that a lot of times they'll have theater or studios will have separate branches that do distribution, or just in their own company departments that work purely on distribution. But a lot of times they are not the same. Okay, so that's another big one.
Sorry, if you guys see me getting distracted, it's because we're on two different cameras. So we are live on YouTube for the first time.
Yeah.
So, and we keep going back and forth between cameras.
And I think they're saying that this for the Facebook one, I think the mic is terrible. And I don't know if I'm speaking up loud because I don't know where your mic is.
I don't even know where my mic is on there.
Yeah, trying to figure out both of these, it's kind of a pain. We will get better at this, I swear. I promise we will. But we do want to be bringing all this information out. We wanted to get more people on here. But I know you wanted to discuss this as well. Anyway, so back to the Stream Wars. With everything going on, I don't know if anybody remembers, but it was a couple years ago when it was after Disney had announced that they're making Disney Plus and they're going to be pulling all their content. Netflix went on this buying binge. I think they went into debt with Wall Street, pulling loans.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, because they were losing their catalog, some of their big tentpole movies that they were going to have in their catalog. So they went on this buy binge to go, oh, we need to license this, we need to license this, we need to buy it out. And I forget how big they got. But that was a big one. And then it didn't play out like everybody thought it would. And Disney ended up going back through them and were like, oh, okay, we'll license you out some of the Marvel stuff for now because we're still
almost like a saving
fine-tuning
grace.
it.
Like, we'll lend you this so you can stay afloat.
Yeah, we won't back out on our contracts now. Look, guys, we're not doing. And they did this last year. I think it was August. We're not using this as a new distribution model. Just so you know. And it was like a month later. They're like, oh wait, yeah. We are using this as a new distribution model. Like, you gotta be kidding me.
What, with Mulan?
Yes,
because,
Mulan.
Well, they probably saw what happened with Trolls.
Yeah.
And we're just like, you know what? They did it.
That's what started it.
Why don't we just do it?
Yeah.
And Netflix does it anyways.
Yep.
But I think Trolls really, added that extra for them. Because Universal is a big studio just like Disney. Netflix is like a lot more brand new compared to them in the field, so...
Yeah. But you're right. So, yes, that all spawned with this whole vertical integration push again, even more so with Trolls World Tour. So yeah, Universal had this whole thing. They pulled from their distribution off of AMC. It was all of them, but
Regal,
yeah.
Right? AMC Regal?
No, I think it was AMC. Is it AMC Regal? I'll have to look that up.
Is it the same thing? Can't remember.
Yeah, I think they're two separate. But I could be completely wrong with that. Anyways, but they had distribution to distribute a tentpole film, Trolls World Tour, which is the second. This is a sequel with AMC, and then they pulled it because they were like, "Oh, nobody's going to the theaters, the pandemic, the shutdown." Yeah, I get it. That's all part of it. And in Universal's defense, they're like, "Oh, we have a toy distribution licensing that we need to get out there, otherwise we're going to lose a lot of revenue because that's actually what George Lucas did to build his empire after Star Wars was he sold a lot of those rights to it, but he kept the the toy licenses for that?
The
merchandise rights. That's what I was saying. I'm saying toy.
We're gonna close off Facebook and just go directly to YouTube, and then we'll post that to Facebook after because the mic here on this computer isn't coming in clearly.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah.
That seems like a better solution. So if you guys want to join us on YouTube, we'll be on YouTube Live for a little bit, still discussing the same topic. If not, you guys can wait till we release this video onto Facebook.
Yeah.
All right. Later, Facebook guys.
Bye, Facebook. Hello, YouTube. It's like, yeah, go and end that there. Thank you. All right. So, what was I saying? I forget. Where did I leave off on? Trolls World Tour. Yes. Yeah. So after that, yeah, that's right. Universal had the merchandising thing. That's how George Lucas made his. A lot of his money was not from the films, but from the merchandising that he licensed out to many people, and that's really a thing. That is really a thing.
Well, merchandise brings in a lot of money.
Yeah, well, that was a joke usually. They were making in Spaceballs. It's like the only reason why Lucas blessed off Mel Brooks to do Spaceballs was under the caveat like, no, you can't sell any merchandise to that because Lucas owned all the merchandise rights for it, and so they mock it like, oh, merchandising. This. Spaceballs, the lunchbox. Spaceballs, the flamethrower.
And
kids will
my
love
favorite, what was it?
Spaceballs the doll. Me. Yeah. So yeah, that was one reason why they did that is because Lucas decided to do that. Anyways, I know that's a whole digression from the discussion. However, that's what Universal was saying, the whole reason why they pulled out of the AMC deal, which again was probably just I see, that's the thing. I don't think it was already made, like the deal was already made.
For what?
Because they're for AMC to showcase that, because these deals are made individually on a per film basis. Like block booking is not really a thing unless you're moving from that to
it also depends what was in the contract
or aggregator. Excuse me. That's what I'm saying.
Whether it was exclusive or non-exclusive.
Yeah,
If it's Universal, then it was probably non-exclusive.
Yeah, absolutely. Not just that, not just non-exclusive for that, but usually, especially for tentpole films, if you're pulling out of a deal like that, there are stipulations in contracts that say, well, you're going to have to pay money for it. And they might have fronted the money. So it wasn't a legal issue. When AMC issued was it the CEO or the board, issued the letter saying, hey, we're not going to accept it. This is just bad business on Universal's part.
Bad taste.
It was, left a bad taste in our mouth. They didn't mention anything about litigation, about breaking contract. So anybody that was thinking that it was some sort of breaking contract I feel they're a little bit off kilter on the subject, because that was never a part of why they did that.
I think we have to give it to Universal because of the fact that they're not some small company. They're a pretty big company. They have pretty good lawyers. They have pretty good people in charge. So you would think that AMC and Universal would have communication about what's going to go on with that film, especially since the pandemic hit. It came out of nowhere, and they had no other option. They spent all this money on this film just to not recoup anything.
Absolutely.
Yes, it leaves a bad taste, but they're still trying to, live off what they create, right?
Absolutely.
It's still their product. They're not just gonna sit on it for a whole year just to release it.
Yep.
They're not getting anything.
How
would they pay their employees?
And animations take forever. They're much longer than doing a feature film, right? A live action, I should say, not a feature film, but a live action. The turnaround time is much longer. So.
Man, I'm just thinking, I really would love to see what their contract said and read it and go through it.
Yeah, that would be kind of cool. We haven't actually looked to see, but I'm pretty sure that's all.
I wonder if it's
not.
out.
No, I don't think so.
Would it be out?
No, I don't think so.
I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't know. I find it interesting to go through contracts and kind of diagnose.
I let her do all that. Yeah. Anyway, so besides that, though, and how this kind of moves into why they did it, Disney decided look, they got through, and so we're gonna do that with Mulan, and they put it out on Disney Plus. They weren't doing any theatrical release, except in other countries, I believe, but here in the U.S. they weren't doing a theatrical release, and instead they were doing a paid VOD. On top of their, what was it? It was a paid VOD on top of their membership fees that they were already having it, so they could try to recoup how much they were going to make from that. So that's why it's from there, and then again Disney came out going, yeah guys, don't worry, this is not a new distribution model. It's just a one-off. Trust us. Just trust us. And it wasn't even like 2 months later. They're like, oh, by the way, we're flipping all of our focus from other parts of our production to focus purely on our streaming platform. Meaning, translation to that was, we're moving all of our tentpoles to Disney Plus. So, all this whole trust us guys was literally just smoke and mirrors to do that, because they were already making moves to do this. They already knew what they were doing, and it was just accelerated with all the incidents that happened during the pandemic and during the lockdown. So now they have an incentive for that to go, hey, let's shut down brick and mortar even further. Let's expand on this new media loophole, because Netflix hasn't gotten hit. Nobody's suing them. They're getting away for that. Now that we've got our own distribution model, and then what was it? Warner Brothers. That was the last one.
That's exactly what I was gonna bring up. Is Warner Brothers, right?
Warner Brothers, yeah. The whole 2021 slate of films is releasing on HBO Max, and they're doing something that they haven't done in, I think, like 10, 15 years, where they try to do same day release on VOD as in the theaters. And I think I just saw numbers. Trying to think. It was one of Warner Brothers. Yeah, it's one of Warner Brothers' first movies that they released, and it was an article, I think, in Hollywood Reporter, or Deadline, and they were talking about like, oh look, it's so successful at like 14 mil.
Was
like that.
it Wonder Woman?
No, it was not. And it was like it's one of the best ones for same day release, because Wonder Woman only purely released on HBO Max.
Oh, did it?
It didn't do a same day release as it did for whatever this movie was. I gotta look it up again. It's but yeah, it's really shady. It's super shady, guys. It's
When are we going to start establishing rules and standards for new media?
Absolutely.
It's been quite a long time now.
Yeah.
Enough time for us to actually review, all the new media films that have come out and come up with a standard.
Yep. Because here's how it mirrors if you're not tracking with what I was talking about with the old 1948 Supreme Court ruling and then what's going on today. It's like modern day block booking, like what they're doing with everything else. They're putting it back on the theaters. Like, hey theaters, we know that you're a distribution. You have your own distribution, but it's like, oh, but it's different than ours because we're doing streaming. We're not owning theaters, so we're still under that standard of the 1948 ruling. But we have this new thing called streaming, and you guys can go just kick rocks. And we're just going to give you the movies that we feel we want to give you because we're going to bank on our own platform. That's essentially exactly the same thing what they did back in the 1900s, early 1900s.
Well, then where does that leave like the indie companies, the indie filmmakers?
Yeah, that's another. And that kind of circling back to the theaters too. Their complaint was that they added a certain level of prestige, which is true. A lot of especially indie filmmakers, like if you can get theatrical distribution for a good amount of time. Even the PR alone, even if it's just like a few days, even if like it's under a week, you can still say released in select theaters and put your PR at that. It raises the level of awareness and prestige for a film when you're distributing, let's say, other streaming platforms or TV. It gives you essentially like selling power, for all these platforms, for whether it be TV, whether it be streaming, for be any other avenue of distribution, purely based off of having a theatrical release, spending money to that, and a lot of times they will eat that cost. Was it like Blair Witch? They had $12,000 for production. I don't know if that included distro or paying for select theater releases, but it definitely, I'm pretty sure that it also paid for PR.
Right. Well, just because COVID hit last year and all the theaters have been down, it just makes me think about and when they're going to be opening up, and how that is, again, how is that going to affect the indie companies? Are they only going to be playing select few? Like before they were, but even now more so, they need to recoup what they've lost over the past year. So would they only be playing, big tentpole movies? And
that's the thing. It's like they were already circumventing that. Like what was the movie? It was an animation, Soul. All right, Soul is considered a tentpole movie based off of it's a Pixar film, right? And then it had massive success on the platform, but there's no theatrical release on it. Again, that licensing out to, say, if they license out to other streaming platforms, they're not doing it for theaters. Again, that's modern day block booking. You guys get only the ones that we tell you can get. It's no longer, hey, it's a tentpole, it comes to us first, to the movie theaters first. It's whatever we tell you to do. And that is a dangerous, slippery slope, which repeats.
Granted, you can still go to the studios and try to get your movie in, but then at that point, you're kind of selling that to them.
Yeah.
Versus working with them. Because a lot of these studios, when you do sell to them, they kind of, in some of the contracts and in some of the wording, they kind of have an exclusive contract with your body of work, with the film that you submit to them. And at that point, you kind of lose a lot of control and you lose the percentage of profit that you could be making off of it because of that. Because a lot of them deal in flat fees. So
yeah, well, that might be different depending on which studio you're going through. And you're talking about a studio buying out to distribute to their channels versus just going to a distributor yourself.
It would have to be a new.
I mean, okay, so that's another thing when you're selling films. There's so many different avenues for distribution. You could sell it to a company like a bigger studio. That's the thing is, unless you already have a track record to make bigger films like that, and they already know your work and they're interested in your work, and you're making these deals to make that, they won't necessarily buy it per se unless you've already got that track record and it shows success on it. So it's a little.
It's wishy-washy.
It is kind of wishy-washy, but there's so many different avenues that you can take with it. It's. So I get what you're trying to say with that, but that's not necessarily in terms of like the studio as much as it is for like distributors, right? It's kind of like after the fact.
But if the studios become the distributor,
yes,
I think it's where I'm referencing is that the studios do become the distributor,
which you
could work with them.
Yep.
But at that point, you're relinquishing, depending on the deal that you get with them, you would relinquish a lot of your rights for that film.
Absolutely. Knowing,
just based off the contracts that I've seen already, when you're trying to sell off of, say, Amazon or any other streaming platform, right? Mm-hmm. Some of the wording is just like you kind of lose a lot of those rights for your film.
Yeah.
You guys would have to go in and read that for yourself to actually come to those conclusions.
Or get a media lawyer.
Entertainment lawyer.
Yeah. Who really knows what they're doing to understand the contracts that you are signing.
You should always get an entertainment lawyer. I'm just saying, like, if you wanted to review it on your own, it's a lot of lawyer speak. It's all about how you talk, how you phrase things, what words you use, Mm-hmm. So really take a look at it, and if you're interested in that stuff, or just leave that to your entertainment lawyer. It's good to know off the top of your head, though, as a producer.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, you don't have to know everything, but just enough. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So besides that, like, again, this is why it's such a weird thing that nobody's actually talking about this, is because again, instead of these studios owning theaters, which is like, oh, that's why it's not a monopoly, it's theaters, but they're effectively trying to block them out from showing content. I remember there's another article I had posted about that. Again, I've written about a lot of this stuff on Film Jammer, and it was like, oh, well, they're not just giving them.
What's Film Jammer?
Oh, Film Jammer. That's our news aggregate site. We mostly repost news from different news outlets for that, and then we also have a blog that we do post up some of our own stuff. More of the things that we've written, some reviews, but mostly just like some of the power moves. And we do that blog every once in a while, so it's not. It needs to build, is what it needs to do. I need to just start writing more on it too. That's what Film Jammer is.
That we do.
Yeah. That's true. And anyway, but I posted that article on there, and it literally it shows a timeline of what happened. So if you are interested in that, maybe I'll throw a link down there, or just find my other one of the what Hollywood doesn't want.
Comments below. Comments below.
Yeah. But I did that on the other video that I made about Hollywood doesn't want you to know this, because they don't. Because why would they want you to understand this as a creator, or creators like us, to go, hey, by the way, you're kind of screwing us over. Why would they want to know that? Because they're making money hand over fist, because everyone's stuck inside here, stuck at home, being locked down, and paying for these subscriptions and just feeding to it. What?
I don't know if I should bring this up.
What?
I'm just like, are you saying it's kind of like the whole GameStop stuff, where it's like, we'll just let that one go? It just kind of popped in my head.
Yeah. But yes, it is essentially that. And taking money away from, say, like independents, because now it's only the big studios. Again, why this is such a dangerous thing, and why indie filmmakers need to be upset about this and banding together the same way, is we're getting the short end of the stick. Because by the time when it comes down to it, and your only distribution avenues cut off from movie theaters, again, it costs money to do that. But it costs money to do that to gain prestige so you can sell better. Now what happens when you lower that selling power that you got? how you're going to have to bend down and bow down to all these studios to go, yes, please take that. I will do whatever I can. And their contracts, even for their actors, are ridiculous. They're absolutely ridiculous. I don't know if you remember that article I posted about the Marvel actors, the people that acted in Marvel movies.
Explain it.
Okay, so there was an article that I came across, and it was talking about how these contracts that they make Marvel actors and actresses sign are just way out of line. I mean, I get the whole physicality for it. You got to stay in shape. You got to stay healthy. Fine. But they went as far to say, like, well, now you have to show, under contract, you have to do certain things in real life to show and exemplify your hero's persona. You have to be that hero. Not only by acting like, good people, but you also have to, and it was literally built into their contracts, you have to attend certain benefits that we approve and tell you have to be there. Under contract, they have to go to these benefits, these fundraisers, whether or not they agreed with, the policies or not. They have to, by contract. And I kind of feel like that's a little bit BS there. I mean, why, forget having free thought or anything like that, or being able to have your own opinion, which that was another thing, the whole realities are, thought police thing that's totally different. It's all in the political realm.
Thing.
That's in the political realm. But that is technically relevant because now you've got a lot of the tech companies getting involved with this too, talking about it. But once the tech companies transition to having those sort of restrictions, I guess, to put it lightly, they're having those sort of restrictions, guess what gets hit as well? Entertainment. Entertainment and tech are the two biggest industries in California. That's what made California the fifth biggest economy in the world.
King Kong?
Yeah, if they were all fighting on the same side to destroy humanity, sure. That's not what it is. But
the little guy?
Yeah, we are the little guy.
Don't worry about that little guy.
Yeah. Pay no attention to the big corporations behind the curtain. It's like, but that's essentially what it is. This is why it's completely, to me, it's a bit asinine to think that more indie filmmakers are waking up to this, but not enough, not yet, and that's why we wanted to discuss that. Oh, I don't know what you're doing on there.
I'm hopping on Instagram.
Yeah, okay. You like to do that. That's fine.
I think we're like.
That's fine. Yeah, alright. Anyway, but it did start with Trolls World Tour, even though the steps were already being put into place by Disney, by AT&T, or any of these other ones that, other streaming companies that started to build around 2016, 2017. So, I mean, there were already plans to do that regardless, but yeah, that's been a big one, of why it came out. And then with the pandemic, with everything shutting down and locking down, it just created those grounds to go, okay, now we can do it and forget everybody else. Don't worry about that. And like you said, it's very similar to the GameStop, the GameStop thing where they're like, oh, let's just shut it down. Let's short sell it. And yeah, who cares about everybody else? Because as long as the rich get richer, what does it matter? Same thing with the studios. Why is nobody talking about the studios? Everyone keeps talking about these technological oligarchies, and it's like, why is nobody talking about the studios? They've been doing they've been making these exact moves to vertically integrate for years now.
Well, what if they because they know that history, that they're just slowly tiptoeing around it?
Yeah, they're not tiptoeing anymore.
Take advantage of it.
They tiptoed around it earlier on. They did tiptoe around it earlier on because they were trying to see who was going to hit Netflix, because Netflix was the first.
Right.
They're like, hey, doesn't that violate antitrust law? Didn't the Sherman Antitrust Act? And then they were like, oh, wait, nobody's hitting that. Hey, wait, now they're winning awards and taking out, taking Best Picture and our own awards for this. Why are they not getting hit? All right, you know what? We're going to counteract that. We're going to build our own streaming services, and that's where they went with it.
Well, they want a piece of that cake too.
Yeah.
But the thing is, as soon as they get on it, because they're such big corporations, it'll be easy for them to just kind of.
Well, they have the capital.
Super like.
They have the capital. They have the tech.
Everything.
Yeah, they have
like
the capital and they have
20,
the tech.
Like Century 20.
Yeah.
Fox.
Oh, so, again, how nobody can see this, it's ridiculous. Just seeing how many, it's essentially cannibalism, corporate cannibalism. Eating up all these companies to gain more power under themselves so that they can make these power moves to do things like re-monopolize the film industry. Again, that might seem like a big claim. However, it's if you look at the history of filmmaking, if you look at the history of why it's separated between the studios and the theaters, and it has to do with the distribution chains, and if you look back with block booking and how it was actually done, it is essentially the exact same thing of what's going on now, except that theaters don't have streaming, and I know you can argue with that with like with services like Fandango, which technically,
but it's like a third party, no?
It's still a third party, and now another move that they took, another move that Disney took away from everyone was, again, I think it was back in October, November, they stopped producing and licensing out for DVDs and Blu-ray. So anybody else that was doing sales for hard media, they took that away. They took that away. They were like, no, we just base it off of what sales are and how well they do it. Dude, that's a catch-all BS that even Amazon does to shadow ban certain films because they don't agree with them. Oh, no, it's just based off of algorithms. Like, you realize even films that aren't available, you can still search. So why wouldn't certain films be in the search? That doesn't make any sense. And now it becomes more of a political way. Yeah.
Why are they being pushed to the bottom of the bottom?
Yeah, but this thing, they're not just being pushed to the bottom of the bottom. They're just gone. Like, you don't see them anymore at all. So, again, it's so ridiculous to think of this because and this is the thing too. People usually see it in ways of, well, how would I act if I owned a big company? And it's like, no, they're not doing anything bad. At the same time, this has massive ramifications towards the film industry, especially indies, especially movie theaters. And why movie theaters are trying to now bow down to these big corporations like Disney or Warner Brothers or Universal, as in they made that deal, AMC reneged on that whole, like, hey, we're no longer going to play Universal movies. And they're like, you know what, instead of the 90-day, we're going to give you a 30-day. I'm like, how are you going to recoup cost anyway for something like that? And then now you've got Warner Brothers going out doing same-day releases. Like, movie theaters are going to shut down even further.
Warner Brothers is going ahead doing their little shady thing, Yeah.
So again, it's like, this doesn't make sense for this. Why would you do a 30-day window, which I think it dropped down now to 17 days?
Yeah, what's the point of doing that? I mean, I get theatrical release. It's supposed to gain more audience and views, just so that when you do release it through SVOD or TVOD, that people will go and buy it if they saw it in theater, if they heard the hype about it from the theater. Mm-hmm. But I know. I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, and that's a whole other deal too. It's when you go to streaming and say like you eliminate physical media, you're not buying that film. You are buying a license of that film. And that's why you're able to stream it only through their platform. They own it all. They want to own you, and they want to own all your content, so they can just continue to get richer and richer and richer. And I think that's BS. It's like
that's how to the little guy.
Yeah, and again, why more independent filmmakers and even movie theaters aren't getting more?
Why are they struggling? Mad at this? Right. They're struggling so hard right now to get their films distributed or, like, to make their return on investment, right? And it's just, where are those platforms where indies can thrive?
Yep.
That will work with the indie.
Yep. Because I think I mentioned this before, Netflix, even Netflix itself, a lot of these streaming platforms for the distro, for indies, is all flat fees. I think Netflix caps out at, like, $12K. So if you spent anything more than $12K on that, you are not recouping it. Because say if Netflix is the only one to bite out of any of the stream platforms, the bigger stream platforms out there, how are you going to recoup your costs?
And then it's like, if it does do well on the platform, sometimes they'll give you the option to renegotiate.
Correct. But they won't ever do that off of views.
Right.
Because it's all proprietary information and data that they keep, and they keep skewing, going, no, look, we just do it from wherever. And guess what? Your distribution on Netflix is going to be, especially if you're in the U.S., is going to purely be in the U.S. You probably won't get international distro, but I'd have to go and check
they
their
They do
their
international.
They do that, but...
You can negotiate it. You can still do international through Netflix. I think it depends on the contract.
It does depend on the contract.
Again, that goes back to who is your... What is it? Because there's the distribution channel, and then there's a distributor. Like is it aggregator?
Distributor,
like
yeah.
Middleman? Like
it
Jason
depends.
Burbanker, right?
Yeah, Burbanker, he does...
connects you with the person who distributes the film.
That's an aggregator,
platforms.
yeah. So they aggregators are essentially groups or companies that gather a bunch of films and redirect to distributors or distributing companies, so then you can actually get distributed. So and then the other side is that they actually do help with people to get distributed on those, so you can work with their people. So instead of them taking that to do it for you, they can show you how to do it, and so it's still technically like a third party going into there. But yeah, that's a whole other aspect of it. But kind of moving back to that whole new media loophole, like I said, the laws for that, it's like there are no laws for it. They were trying to promote more of that technological advancement, is why they're so lenient with it. You know, they're so lenient with new media, and because of that, again, that just bypassed all of the rulings from, like I said, the ruling from the U.S. versus Paramount in 1948. Now feature films can literally be shown across computers and streaming, and again, now they're trying to get rid of cable.
Right, but it's
kind of
funny.
the same sort of way with that, to go purely through internet. So you stream through your TV, which your TV is now acting as a computer, which is considered new media.
I think that leads us into the next thing. It's like, where does that leave TV? You know, like Comcast. I think, was it you who brought it up, that they have all these film streaming services, but you could bundle them like cable.
It's essentially
it's the same thing, but it's
there are a couple. I've only seen a couple services that are trying to bundle like that, but I mean, you're still going to be paying the same.
The only difference is that you get to choose when you watch it, right?
Well, you can do that on cable right now. You have to record.
That's true. That's
the only difference between it, and I think it matters, and why this whole new media thing has gotten kind of out of hand with it is it has to do with how it goes out. Because like I said, old media as opposed to new media, you know, they include analog television, but it doesn't technically count cable, but the analog might consider cable as part of the old analog system as old media, because it is outdated, is a little bit older, regardless of it being connected to services like Comcast, which offer both cable and the internet. So if it has to do with the channels that they use, or the methods that they use, it's like, well, analog versus digital. Like, there are different separations for that, but it's essentially the exact same thing, because you're still getting the same content. Well, it's very, very strange. And again, what does that mean for cable TV? Are they trying to get phased out? And I've heard other people say that too. Like, cable TV television is just going kaput.
Right, because usually when you go and get cable, you buy a package, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you get a certain amount of channels, and a certain amount of channels are different distribution companies.
Yeah.
And for people who are buying streaming services, are they gonna really want to buy, like, say, like, the smaller companies? You know, like, oh, we got Netflix, we got Disney, we got Hulu, we got HBO, but are they gonna want to buy, like, PBS? Are they gonna want to buy, like, Discovery?
Well, look at Hulu. Look at Hulu. Hulu's been rehashing out to do TV and releasing episodics per week. Now Disney Plus is doing that with their series. They're doing the exact. They're recreating the model. They're literally recreating the wheel without actually being counted as all these antitrust to be counted underneath all these antitrust laws that prevent them from monopolizing it. Right in front of us.
Because it's new media.
Because it's considered new media.
New media doesn't have those standards set in place yet, so there's a lot of loopholes that they can do.
Yeah.
Again, when are we going to bring in those standards for new media? It's been quite a while. Enough time for us to get our footing.
Yeah. So that's kind of been the discussion of why we're trying to get the awareness out there, especially to indie filmmakers. Because, again, the studios, they want to own you because it just gives them more power over it. And if they own you, and I think we've had this discussion as well. We know a filmmaker out here who had most of their movie made. It was kind of was it a sci-fi
which
type
filmmaker?
of movie?
Because there was a couple that we knew that got.
Yeah. I know, but they had cut a deal with a station to finish making their movie. I think I put film and movie together and came up meal for some reason. Anyway, but they wanted the studio of this TV studio to essentially collab with them and fund the second half of their movie, and they made a pretty cool trailer for it. Yeah, and what happened? They asked, "Is it done?" And he said, "No, we're looking for funding to get the other half of it." And what happened is they went, "Oh, we would have bought it if it was done, but since it's not, now you have to, if you want us to come in here, and this is exactly the game that they play, you have to make all these changes to the story. We want to see it this many times. We want to see this if you're a creature or whatever you got in there this many times, this often, etc., etc." And now they control the creative content.
You lose all your creative control as an indie filmmaker at that point.
Yeah.
And then you don't really get to showcase your skills and your stories. Yep.
You become a cog in the machine.
And here is
and a very small cog.
Here is our how we go from A to Z, and their story, instead of showcasing your skills and showcasing your art,
Yep. So I don't know why a lot of people get into film, like their own reasons, but one of my reasons why I did, there's many reasons why I did, was I was tired of seeing films that were just rehashing the old storytelling.
Same storyline.
Here's the same storyline, just a couple different elements. There were no avenues. Or they'll have like twin films where they'd have the same concept but just in two different films. It's almost the exact same concept. No different, like very small variations of it, instead of just being creatively open and telling the story that you want to tell. I want it to be like, well, it would have been better to end it this way. It would have been cooler to end it that way. Why did they have to make this decision? It's breaking character. It doesn't even make sense. It's not adding a separate dimension to them. It's just terrible. So that was one of the reasons, one of many reasons why I got into film and storytelling, was because of that. It's like I wanted that freedom to go, hey, there are better ways to tell stories, and there's better steps that you can take in the storytelling process to just make it overall just better. Eliminating plot holes, eliminating like these weird moments that don't technically fit in, or just throwing people for a loop or using gimmicks as opposed to actual good storytelling to tell a story.
Go back to the art of filmmaking.
Yeah.
Go back to the old school
Thank
movies. Why did I love 80s horror movies? As bad as some of them can get, but their stories are just pretty interesting and cheesy, and they're on their own beat. They all have their own characteristics and their own personalities. And yes, I can say that about a movie because I've seen enough of them. But I want to see that. I don't want to see the same horror movie again that I've seen in the past decade, that I've seen like dozens of them that are all the same. I'm tired of seeing movies that are... So I'm going to speak of horror because I've been watching a lot of horror or fantasy. I'm tired of seeing movies that are the same, where it takes like about practically more than half of the movie to get to any good stuff, right? I'm tired of it being super slow, and then it's like, oh, super chaotic, and here's climax, and it's gone. Climax for like 5 minutes, and then it's gone.
We won't mention specifics. But there are
too
movies that
many
like that. It's a trend. That's why.
There are too many to name off, and it's not even just horror. Like, I've seen it with, like, drama. I guess, like, slice of life, yeah. It's kind of their style, but...
It's funny because, like, all the newer... Whenever these movies start going a little off to make their own stories, they drive that into the ground and then making them cliche because they've driven it into the ground. Right? That's just kind of how it goes. That's how you get all these weird trends. And I really hope they move out. Especially in the horror genre. I've talked about this on some of the forums. It's like, stop. Yeah, the premise was strong. It was great. It was a new idea, but the execution for it was terrible because 2/3 of your movie was all set up and there was no meat to it. It's like going, hey, 2/3 of your entire sandwich is just bread. And that's the
it's just a bag of chips. That's like, what it is.
Yeah, it's like a bag of chips.
But it's not all that in a bag of chips. It's just a bag of chips.
The bag of chips.
Where it's like mostly air and then like a little bit of chips. You know?
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like...
Sometimes you get the Takis where it's a little spicy. Like, it really catches your attention, but there's just too much air in there.
Yeah. But that's a whole other discussion that we could have about it. I know that we're going a little off topic of it. but yeah, we wanted to talk out against the whole vertical integration of Hollywood and how that's coming together. Again, tech is already trying to do it. There's already lawsuits against big tech.
Tech is
that's
also going into filming too.
Well, it is part of it. New media is considered.
Apple's got Apple TV.
Apple's got TV. Yeah, when is Google going to start heading over there?
What is it that we were at a tech company and we were shooting an episodic for them?
Oh yeah.
I don't know if we can really talk about that too much.
No, we can't. We're
under
NDA with that.
It's still tech going into doing entertainment.
Yep.
Basically, it's the same thing.
That was, I believe, it wasn't internal. No, it was internal. It was internal, which is why we can't talk about it. But yeah, they are doing that to disseminate their information, not just in there. And I know some tech companies are trying to do the commercial side, But again, it goes way beyond that, and how it relates because, again, the two biggest industries in California are tech and film, and I believe it was at least in 2017, 2016, 2017, 2018. Film and entertainment, excluding the music industry. So, including gaming, excluding the music industry, was the number one industry in the U.S. So, you got those things working for us, and then all of a sudden you get all these giant studios, which are, just like oligarchies in themselves, like that, controlling it all. And then, again, they started paying creators less and less and less. It is a fact. I think, what's the Amazon distro for Amazon Prime? It's like 12 cents per unique view on Amazon Prime. Mm-hmm. And the unique view counts as one person's account watching it. So one person's account, say this person watched your film 50 times, since you've put it on this, since they got it, that will count as one unique view.
12
and
cents. That's it.
12 cents. You will get a total of 12 cents for 50 views. And which is why, again, streaming platforms, say like Netflix or Hulu or all these ones, can flub their numbers. They can give you, no. See, we didn't do that well. But they're still making thousands, if not millions of dollars on having that library, which includes your content. And you're just getting just a flat fee.
You know why they flub the numbers? Because they used to flub their viewings in theaters when theaters were open. Like, they would buy out the seats.
Yeah.
And be like, this many people want to go see this movie. Where they would be like, this many people want to go see the movie. When actually they just bought out the seats. To make it seem like people bought the seats. To build that, audience.
That's the other shady side of, the Oscars and whatnot. And these big, LA and New York and stuff like that. Yeah. In LA and New York, that was a practice. In order to gain notoriety and to raise prestige, studios would actually book out, the theater, theater, bulk buy, kind of, bulk buy seatings to go, look, it's sold out. It's sold out in theaters. What are you talking about? It's because they bought all the seats.
Tactic?
It is a shady marketing tactic, and it happened all the time. Look, they sold out in theaters. No, you bought the theater. You bought that theater to showcase yours, and most of it was bought back by anybody that was there. Like, a lot of them were their own people, going to go watch the film that they already bought the seats for. So, yeah, it sold out to the theaters because they just the studios fed the money. And again, it's like, this is that whole BS game that they like to play.
But that bulldozes over all the other films that are in there, indie or not, and even when it comes to smaller theaters, the mom and pop theaters that are struggling right now, just kind of bulldozes that.
Yep. And this is why it's important to know your industry. This is why we want to get more of that out there as creators. And again, big tech doing a lot of this stuff. I mean, YouTube and other ones like that are having their own versions of it. This is why it's important to understand all that. It does all tie together because they're making similar moves. Yes, we're on YouTube Live right now, and who knows how long this will actually be up because of that. But it's not just that, but even Facebook Live,
Well, Instagram Live right now.
Instagram Live right now, too. I mean, like, all these companies own each other. All these giant tech companies own each other, and it's the exact same. Yeah, it's the exact same way that the film industry is owned. It's the exact same way as the music industry is owned. But we are going in that direction, and you're wondering why the music industry is actually failing. That you get how much I saw on a post when I reposted that video. Someone's like, "Oh, man, 12 cents per unique view. Man, that would kill in the music industry because they get like per unique listen, it's like 0.01.
Oh my gosh,
something, like
is that real?
13 something. Yeah, I can pull up the number on it, and it's like, oh, that's how much they get.
Goodness.
Yeah, it is worse, and that's where we're headed. It's nothing new. It's the same place.
Why are our artists struggling?
Yeah, everything else to keep you
unless you're already in the game.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just so ridiculous with it. It is a pay to play. A lot of it is pay to play, which is ridiculous. You're already paying to play by making your film, which may cost upwards of $100K out of your own pocket. We've heard of people drop $100K of their own money because they wanted to be a filmmaker. They had a story to tell. I think that was one guy that was out here who did that. He's like, yeah, but I think that was one guy we're talking about before, and he's like, oh, I dropped $100K. He's like, he saved it up. I don't know if he was like an engineer or something. So it was one of the guys who got his film distributed after 2 years of making it, of trying to get distribution. And that's the thing too. A lot of people are like, oh yeah, I know a lot about distribution. It's like, no, you just handed it off to your distributor, and they got you distribution.
This is why I said read these contracts and really research them so that you become familiar with it. You don't have to be like an expert at it. That's what your entertainment lawyer is for.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. But anyway, his story was that he dropped $100K of his own saved money to make a film that he was really passionate about. Couldn't get distributed for like 2 years, and when he finally got distributed, it was on Hulu. And we took him off to the side and was like, hey, I just had a question for you because I'm pretty sure I know the answer. And I want to ask for direct numbers, but I guarantee you didn't get any of that money back to recoup your $100K that you lost. He's like, nope, not even half. I think he even said not even a quarter. He didn't even get a quarter of what he got back, what he spent on the film itself. So you are paying to play. They want you to pay more, and that's completely ridiculous, I think, because if you got a product and it's a good product and you've put money into it and effort and time and effort, why not be able to showcase that out? Why get restricted by all these big tech, by all the tech companies, by all these big, which they are kind of tech companies now, the big studios for that to showcase your product? Why is that? Isn't this not a free market? And that's the kind of whole idea behind capitalism. You have a product that you've made. You want to share that with the world, and then let the world decide whether it's good or not. Not these gatekeepers, and that's why I really...
These algorithms that don't even allow these films to even be seen.
Or searched.
Or even music. Yep. Indie music,
Yep. Yeah, we are the ones, and that's like you kind of brought it back to the whole GameStop thing. We, the people, have that power. We drive that. Why are they the ones that have to do that and restrict us? Because we could have a great idea for it that many people would resonate with. Nope, Not unless you get their approval. And that's why you get this whole thing of like the gatekeepers. And then you get this whole weird stigma in the film industry where actors and filmmakers, crew, and everybody thinks the only way you'll make it is if you go to Hollywood. That's just straight incorrect and false. Especially since you got these, and again, they're edge cases, stuff like Blumhouse, or, you know, like making, what's the people that made the Blair Witch, right? Because they knew how to market. They didn't pay as much as, like, say, $100K for Blair Witch. Blair Witch, again, I love using that just because it was started out as an indie, and they raised $12K for it. They spent $12,000, which is as big as many other filmmakers do for their Indiegogo campaigns or Seed and Spark campaigns to raise money for fundraising for their films, and then they'll exceed. They did it with $12K. But they did it right, and they marketed it right, and they got people to see it because they wanted to see it. You know, so again, why are these gatekeepers the only ones that get to decide that? You know, but that was kind of the idea behind the Deadpool released, the test footage that was leaked. It was leaked. Yeah, it wasn't leaked. Yeah, well, it was leaked, but
come on, Ryan.
It was. Yeah. Well, I think they did an interview with him and the director, and it was like, yeah, somebody knew him. Nobody was saying they were going to do it.
Strategic leak.
Yeah, nobody said they were going to leak it, but we knew somebody was going to leak it, and it forced Marvel, because Marvel was not interested in making an R-rated superhero film. It forced them to do it, because now that information was out there, they turned to proof of concept, which proof of concept is a single scene, right? It's not a trailer, because trailers are harder to film. Proof of concept is a single scene in a movie to show the tone, the style, you know, and the storytelling, the pacing, a lot of these things. Proof of concept turned into something called a proof of content. They have content that is proof by the audience, you know, you guys and all of us, to show, hey, there is an audience for it. You should distribute this. So Ryan Reynolds can do it. So
those are the things topics that we can talk about, like proof of concept, you know.
Yeah, yeah, and how it can be used to help up your marketing, and then give you. I always call it's not buying power. That's more on the other side of, like, say, inflation, but sellability, so you can sell it. Right, you're selling power that you've got for that, bumping up that prestige by having a theatrical release, all that sort of stuff. So. So many different things that go in here. But essentially that is how Hollywood utilizes the new media loophole, and how they're continuing to make these power moves to essentially just gain more power, because it's an addiction. It's an addiction for them, right? They will always want more power. They don't care about the little guys. They don't care about any filmmakers. They're always trying to, you know, put a front out of, like, we care. No, they don't. In fact, we've known that, like when say Disney bought out ILM, you know, for or Lucasfilms up north, a lot of that culture that was there that George Lucas helped build,
we care,
went down.
But here's a grape for lunch.
Yeah, that's essentially what it's like. Not saying that actually happened, but that culture went down because they didn't care. They didn't need them. They just needed the name. And that's why you hear stuff like, oh, they're trying to move. I think was it last year, the year before, where they're trying to move LucasArts or Lucasfilm or ILM to, like, Australia or something like that. Yeah, they don't care.
But why do you think they need that name? It's because people,
selling
the
power.
Audience awareness of that name, right?
Yep.
When it goes back to filmmaking, when they ask who is on the project, right? Mm-hmm. Which name person do you have on your project that's well known? Because again, audience awareness is what you need. Those are your consumers.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just I find it sickening that they're just open about it. They don't care anymore, and because they're so open about it, like, and not even being sneaky about it at all, they were literally doing press releases about this, going, oh yeah, we're gonna focus purely on stream. Yeah, we're pulling back on all our DVD sales. We're not doing them anymore. Hey, we're no longer distributing to theaters, or we're gonna do same day. We'll do it just cause, you know, just in case, because theaters are technically still covered under the antitrust case and that ruling. But you know what? We're still going to do our same day. We'll see who wins out, because this is where all our money's going, and this is where people are spending for the streaming. It's just, to me, it's just sickening, man. Because, you know, I got into film. One of the other reasons I got into film was I was an IT guy. I was doing IT, and it's, to me, it never gave me a creative outlet. And I was a pretty creative kid, you know, growing up. It was very technical, and it was almost purely technical. And it's like after doing that for about 5 or 6 years, it was just like, you know, I can't do this anymore. I love being technical, but without having some sort of fulfillment in the career that I want to be technical and creative, you know, at the same time, it's not going to work for me. You know, it just felt like, you know, it almost felt like dying inside every day, just being like, here I am, dude. You know, the whole cliche of like, I am a drone every day, everybody's doing the same sort of movement. It's like that's what it felt like, you know. So that's why I got into film. I got the creative side and the technical side, and it was a great combination of the two. So, and take that away, what else we got? You know, this is why I'm really passionate about filmmaking. You know, there's many reasons why I'm passionate about it, but that's one of the big ones. I love having that technical side and the creative side. You know, now you have people telling you can't do either of those. You have to follow our rules. No, I don't think so. So, whew, I know that's a big one. Anything else you'd like to add to it? Alright, yeah. So thanks for joining us. This is our first live session that we're doing in this. We want to get more people involved in this, more filmmakers, more creatives. I would love to hear more thoughts about this, so leave us a comment.
Send us a message if you want to join.
Yeah, I think we're going to be trying to do this more regularly. We'll figure out a time. I know today was kind of like a spur of the moment sort of deal. But thank you, Hooligan V, for joining me on my channel on there.
This is our channel.
Oh, on this one. This is on.
Oh, that's yours.
Yeah, this is on J Hooligan, right? I'm pretty sure.
I'm confused. I'm on this one.
Oh, you're on for the Instagram live that you got on there. But yeah, I mean, it's we want to do more of these. We definitely want to do more of these and get more perspectives. Because again, this is just one perspective that we've got, and we're very, very much towards like, hey, there are many different lenses and many different experiences and views out there. We try not to, you know, discriminate against it unless, again, you're part of that big, the big oligarchies that are running it, going like, yeah, we don't care about we say they care about it. That's the other thing, like, people say things, that doesn't mean that they actually mean it. You mean companies can lie? We're here to care for you. Whoop. I mean,
I most certainly am not.
Yeah. We want to make sure you're all taken care of. Whoop. Yeah, it's not how it works. Definitely not how it works. Anyway, again, thanks for joining us. We'll get more on track with our live, so then we can really do this well. And we'll see you guys next time.
Later. And then real quick for you guys on Instagram,